Today, Japan has become a workplace for many international folks from across the globe. According to the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare, we're expecting the number of foreign workers to hit around 1.82 million by October 2022. A good chunk of these workers come from Asian countries, like Vietnam, China, and the Philippines. So, how do these people land jobs in Japan? In this video, we'll let you in on the real stories of people who've managed to find work in Japan. We'll cover all sorts of ways to job hunt, from using social media to joining the Japanese job hunting system after getting a degree from a Japanese university, and beyond. The goal here is to give you a clear, no-nonsense look at what it's really like to seek work in Japan, and offer some handy advice. Our Synodos Asia team members, North and Kagari, will be your tour guides for this video.
First of all, please introduce yourself first. Let's start with you first.
Okay, so hello, my name is Lhannie and I'm from the Philippines. So I came here first year in Japan to do my studies in master's PhD, and then I started working first as an English teacher before finally becoming a recruiter right now. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you. That's interesting. You?
My name is Brian. I'm from the United States. Currently, I'm working as a technical recruiter in Japan. Before that, I was just studying here in university.
So which university are you studying?
Scuba University.
Oh, you?
Same one, Scuba University.
I see. And now you're working in Japan, so could you share your experiences about job hunting in Japan?
So my first job was an English teacher. I was working at this school even before I graduated my graduate studies. So I was doing part-time, teaching students, Japanese students. And then before graduation, I asked, can it be a full-time? So yeah, so that's how I first got my job. Yeah, and then after that, I felt that maybe this is not my actual career. So to do my next job hunting, I just went on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, so I scrolled through the internet. Actually, not just LinkedIn, a bunch of Japanese websites as well. I just can't remember which ones. But in the end, I got my current job as a recruiter in the fintech industry through LinkedIn. Yeah, so just applying online. And then all the interviews were online. Some were face-to-face. And then, yeah, got my job here. I think it's because of, at that time, it was COVID, right? So most of the interview process were online and not so much face-to-face. So, yeah.
It's interesting because we all can use LinkedIn, but it's very difficult to get a job through LinkedIn. Do you have any tips to share with us?
I think, first of all, update your profile on LinkedIn for sure. Because before anybody look at your CV, if you apply through LinkedIn, they will look at your profile and then see, if it's actually true on your CV. I think.
Because you are now a recruiter too, so you know this well.
Yes, true. Because we have some, applications who would apply, but they don't have CV. So we will look at their LinkedIn profiles as their kind of second CV.
I see. And what about the Japanese language proficiency? Is it necessary?
So in my work right now, I think, especially the current market, they actually require mostly bilingual fluency, both Japanese and English. 2023 current market's not doing so well, so there are less jobs for English-only roles, at least for the roles that I'm recruiting for in the fintech area. But I guess for the other jobs, they might not be as strict for Japanese, but for now, yeah, hopefully it will change later in the year. But yeah, and then I guess for me, I was lucky enough to join a very international company, so Japanese was not a requirement. It's an advantage, but yeah, English was enough.
Thank you so much. What about you?
Sure thing. This is about the experiences with job hunting. So I graduated university, and they said that I had to go home immediately, 3 days after graduating, which honestly speaking wasn't what I expected. I thought I'd have at least a month at least. So I thought, how am I going to stay here? Well, I guess the only thing I can do is start searching for a job. So for anyone who might be interested in that, there is something called a job hunting visa, which gives you about 6 months. And once you do that, you can do all the shukatsu stuff. Although it doesn't have to be the traditional Japanese way, it just means that you are actively going for the interviews and things. So I looked on LinkedIn. It's the only thing I knew at the time. Trying to find anything at that time, and then I saw one that was for a recruiting job. I applied to that one, I applied to a lot of them actually, and I was able to land one of them. Worked there for about a year, and then with my current company now moved over there, which is a little bit better in terms of the environment. And so I've decided I'm going to stick here a little bit longer, work as a technical recruiter. Overall though, the process wasn't necessarily difficult, it was simply the fact that volume, right? When you're doing LinkedIn, you're applying to a lot of different things, and the majority of them, they'll never come back to you. So you just have to keep going until that happens. But this is where I found myself now, and
it's interesting. Most of you use LinkedIn as a main source of finding job here. So you mentioned about the Japanese style shukatsu. Can you share your I mean, maybe you have heard about this style before. That's why you don't want to join this process. Can you share me about this experience? I mean, what you have heard about this system?
The shukatsu process? Okay.
That's why you want to avoid.
You know, when you go to the shukatsu system, you have every single year all the fourth year, third year graduates coming from universities, all these Japanese individuals who will be competing for more or less the same companies and the same job, right? The problem with being a foreigner means that you're put up directly to compete against them, either in terms of language ability or in terms of cultural appropriateness. And that's very difficult for most foreigners, because just because you study here does not mean you get to envelop all of those ideas. At the same time, as an Asian American, you kind of look the same as everybody else, but you don't really know how to deal with that because they expect one thing, but you give them something else entirely. So I thought it might not be the best way to showcase myself in the beginning. So I decided, let's go a different way. Let's go the traditional route of applying yourself and then trying to see what interviews you can get that way instead of the mass kind of hiring they have in shukatsu.
So it's a very challenge for international students to apply through the shukatsu systems.
I think there's another reason, because most of these shukatsu systems, since it's for Japanese, it would most likely be in Japanese. So there's not much English language, and even if you translate it into English, it's a bit difficult. I went through one kind of like Lhannie shinsatsu, so for the newly graduates, both master's, PhD, or undergrad. So I went through their website, and it's a bit difficult to follow. And they also had kind of a pre-web screening. So they had like questions all in Japanese. There was no English option. So that made it even harder. So in the end, I don't know what was my result because I just didn't have the energy and effort to actually go through with it. So yeah.
So it's kind of language barrier and also cultural differences here. That's why it's make it difficult for international students or international people who want to apply to the same channel with Japanese students.
Unless they really know Japanese, like N1.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of native.
Yeah, almost native.
And besides LinkedIn, and actually you both of you got job from the LinkedIn, and how did you collect job information there? Because there are so many, we are kind of dig into the ocean or a mine like that. There are so many jobs, and sometimes I experience by myself that there are so many jobs that I think, it's maybe with us, but at the end of the day, there will be some more small requirements like that. Do you have any, the way to collect the job that suit you, and also how to screen the job, not just by let them screen our profile, but ourselves? How can we can we know our ability that fit that job or not, because in the LinkedIn there are so many kind of jobs, and it will not be accurately exactly the same as what we study in master or bachelor or PhD.
There are two answers to this that I have. One of them is probably the very standard one. That one is simply keep applying, because there is really no way to understand what you're saying without actually speaking with them first. The ideas of culture, the ideas of what the job actually functions, there is no way to figure that out from a JD. The only thing you can do is try to see if they will talk to you first. And once you talk with a lot of companies, then you'll know. The second answer is use a recruiter. Because
we have recruiters.
we're both recruiters. So our job every day is simple. Our job every day is to understand the companies and the positions and see exactly what it is. When we talk to individuals, we ask about what they want, what they're able to do. And then we try to match them like that. It's impossible for any individual, especially since we know we did the job hunting part. It's impossible to figure all the different companies out and try to understand the cultures. We don't have the information that other people may have. So it's actually not a bad idea to try to reach out to somebody.
Also, it sounds to me like you need to know some people or personal network like that. Maybe.
That's a great thing. I actually got 3 of my first interviews by reaching out to the right people on LinkedIn. Wait, I did not even give them my resume.
I see.
So that's actually a really good way if you want to try to get some connections with them. If you actually just connect on them LinkedIn, just go ahead and give them a message. You're more likely than not to have a casual conversation.
I can agree with that. Just putting yourself out there. I understand that many of us, we study this and then in the end your job is different, because to be honest with you, we really don't know if what we are currently studying is the career that we actually want. And by just reading their websites, the job description, as you mentioned, may not always have the information that you wanted. So getting that first interview, you don't have to think of it like, oh, I have to be perfect for the first interview, or this is the job I really want. But first interviews, what we always say to the people that we talk to, it's not just for the companies. It's also for you, the job hunting person, to have an exposure and more information about the role. So if you think that maybe I can apply here, just go ahead, especially if the company, after reading, even if it's not the right role for you, you can still apply, because if they want you, we will have that meeting and you'll get enough more information. And to be honest, in my case, I think I started my job hunting during my first job, like around December. And then I got my new job around July. So it took some time. And at that time, I interviewed with a few different companies. I applied to many different ones, recruiters, researchers, writers, because I'm not so sure, what's actually best for me. So it's better to just keep exploring, and don't be afraid to, just reach out, as what he did. Even though he didn't know these people, to be honest, right?
No idea, never heard of them.
But you just, chat them up on LinkedIn, like, hey, how are you? I'm doing this. There's nothing wrong with just, getting that first meeting with them.
I think it's a good tips, because when we want to apply through the LinkedIn, we just upload our CV and wait for them to reply to us.
Yeah. So actually following up with them it shows how enthusiastic you are, and how, he really wants to get to know more about us. So we're not just interested in him, this person is interested in us. So
and you mentioned about the periods of time, like when we graduate, the government or our sponsor, they want to send us back home as soon as possible. How can you deal with that situation? Doing like, there will be a gap from graduation and getting a job, and how can you deal with that period of time? Maybe some scholarship students, they will struggling with their stipend and other living expenses like that. So do you have any experience or tips to survive during the job hunting period?
Doing a lot of part-time, well, not a lot of part-time jobs, but allowing yourself to take different part-time jobs. Like in my case, it was even during my studies. I was doing part-time in it's not factory, but it's kind of like
We call that a picking center.
you pack the items that people order online. It was really fun. There's so much international people over there. So that's actually how you also build connections. Because these people, they're also trying to live here in Japan, and then you will know about their background, what they do, and then when both of you graduate or when both of you have your own job, you get to connect with them, and you're asked, "What are you doing right now?" Blah blah blah, and he said, "Oh, we're doing this. We're actually hiring. Maybe you're interested." So yeah, just don't be afraid to get whatever part-time job you want, as long as they're open for foreigners. And yeah, it could be that one, or it could be an English teacher. Or for me, I always wanted to be kind of a part-timer at Starbucks. So I didn't
free
get
coffee.
that one too. But it's like, I think it's a good experience, while looking for your full-time job. Just taking a part-time. I think most people here are open right now.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
And what about you?
Save money the entire time you're here. If you have a healthy amount of I think maybe 300,000 yen, maybe 400,000. That's actually quite a bit of money, actually. By the time you graduate, you have enough for maybe 3 to 4 months before you need to think. Because the one problem with having part-time jobs is that part-time jobs go right into the time you're probably going to have to do returns. So you'll either have to ask for time off during those part-time jobs, or you need to make sure the schedules are on days you don't work. It's not easy for everybody. So giving yourself the best chances by doing nothing but applying to jobs and preparing for interviews will be a huge benefit. I know that's not exactly easy for everyone to do. It's one of the hardest things to do because money is not easy in this country. Absolutely. But if you can, you're putting yourself in a very good position.
300,000 yen, isn't that true maybe for scuba?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Yeah.
No, that was not. That's like what, 1.5 months at most? Yeah, never mind. So
We're in scuba, so actually prices here are much more affordable, whether it's rent, food, or leisure. So I think 300,000 yen would be enough, but I don't think in Tokyo, no.
no,
Maybe if you live in Tokyo, just move to Scuba.
Yes.
that'd be nice.
Oh, but the transportation will cost you though.
Yes, exactly.
And the time, like 1 to 2 hours. So yeah, you just have to pick which one you would sacrifice.
And from your experiences, what about at home? Have you ever had experiences applying a job at your home country? And if compared to here in Japan, are there any differences? Major differences?
Yeah, actually, in my case, I also applied online at home. I think the major difference would be, I don't know, because to be honest, I didn't spend that much time after graduation in the Philippines. So maybe my experience might not be enough, but it was also online. The major difference is everything was face to face because at that time, COVID was not a thing yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, everything was face to face, and it's just I can't think of a big difference except for maybe there's no good timing. I mean, there's good timing, right? But I feel like in Japan they have more specific timing when they actually recruit for people. So that's like around April and even before April, because people are about to graduate, and also around September, before September, when they graduate second semester, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what could be the big difference, I guess.
And from your experiences, what do you think that will be the obstacles or difficulties that Asian people will encounter when apply for the job in Japan, besides the language barrier that we mentioned all the time? Maybe when you do some interview with international company and Japanese company, you may see the differences style.
Well, at least based on what I know for the Japanese style, they might be a little bit too, I don't know if strict is the right term. I mean, because when I was reading up on it, right, on job hunting in Japan, it's like, how when you do face-to-face, you enter the room, you bow, you sit down, and then you bow again. So I'm not sure how true it is, but it's just what I hear and what I read. And they could be, I guess, a little bit too, like they have a system that they have to follow. I think that's what I could say, but it's not my first-hand experience. For not specifically for international students, but for foreigners, speaking from my experience as a recruiter, the Japanese hiring or Japanese HR, they can be really strict about your career and the gaps and how long you stay inside a company. Like if they see 1 year every time, you only stay for a company for 1 year, that's actually kind of an issue for them. Of course, it depends on the company, but you would have to really give a good reason as to why you only stay there for a year, whether it's a personal reason or it's a contract role. But usually Japanese HR, they would prefer someone who has stayed in a company for more than at least 2 years. At least, I think, because even 222 might still be an issue for them. I think that's one of the big differences, because as far as I know, in other countries, maybe in the US, I don't know. I'm not
They
saying
don't care as much.
right? I think for them, they actually welcome that because, you have so much experience. But in Japan, it's more like, you're not going to stay in our company, are you? That's their kind of thought. Yeah.
So they focus on how long you stay.
Yeah, because they really give importance to that, because it's only now that Japanese people are becoming more mobile or going through different companies. But before, a Japanese person, when they go into a company, they would stay there almost until their retirement. Like, it's unthinkable. Why would I change my job? So, yeah.
It's the concept of work.
Yes.
Difficulties.
Yeah.
The difficult part ones you said, those are like major ones, I think. I can't think of much else. But if we're talking about a little less relevant, maybe let's talk about people from like Singapore or something. The amount of salary you get in this country is considerably lower than most other, I would say, like other high-paying countries. So people who come here may find that they just don't want to be working in those situations. They may only want to work with GAFA companies, which are those really high US Geishkes. But if that is the situation, right? I think for a lot of people who come here with that work experience already, it's difficult for them to get the job to begin with, because even the people who are hiring from the HR side would be thinking this is too expensive. So that could be one. But like I said, this is a little bit less relevant because it has less to do with the shoe cuts part of it, with the young people doing it. So the other things I think she already mentioned.
And actually, both of you mentioned about this, and you were both working in the tech company, right? Are there any differences between maybe you cannot compare, but are there any specialty in tech company that attract more foreigners to work with them? Because as I saw looking in LinkedIn, there are more tech company and they want to hire foreigners if compared to other kind of company.
I think the easiest way to think about that is, compared to tech companies, what other companies are also available? Or we can think about healthcare companies, we can think about research companies. The problem with those companies is that the majority of people working in there are already going to be well-versed, educated Japanese individuals who may not have English. So they're going to need and pretty much require Japanese language skills. Tech companies, on the other hand, the main goal for a lot of them is coding, it's programming. And those are usually have English documentation, they learn it through English, but coding itself is going to be using the English language itself. So for them, language is much less of a barrier. And it's a lot easier to invite foreigners who already have this exact kind of experience that don't need too much tweaking because the culture of the work itself isn't too different. The businesses are different. The cultures, internal company cultures are different. That's something. But everything else isn't too bad. It's a whole lot easier for IT. What do you think?
Well, for me, what I think that's most attractive to foreigners, to international people, is, at least from my perspective, it's less of the company but more of Japan. Like, I want to experience Japan. I want to live in Japan. I want to know their culture. So, yeah, I don't think it's much of the tech companies or the company itself, but more like the opportunity to stay here. Because when I talk to a lot of people from the US or from Europe who hasn't really experienced Japan as much, there's always a culture shock. So it's a big difference for them, and they would say like, oh, I've traveled to Japan at least once and I fell in love with it, now I want to work there, kind of thing. At least, yeah.
Yeah, I see. Couldn't agree more. Actually, like, there are not many choices for foreigner at first to have a job here because of the language barrier and other thing. Especially, I have heard some rumor like, if you want to work in leading in company in Japan, you need to graduate from the famous university here.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Yeah, things like Hitachi or
Tokyo, Kyoto, like that.
you kind of have to if you're entering these large old companies. You pretty much need to do that, and the reason is not because you have to be as good as the people around you. It's more the fact that when they look for people, they have a quota. And when you get the quota, where are you going to get them from? They're going to get them from the universities where they've been getting them for years. It's a legacy thing. It's not because of a skill thing at all. But if you want, just because you're one of those companies doesn't actually mean anything. Truthfully speaking, it doesn't determine how you are going to work for the rest of your life. It doesn't even determine where your next job is going to be. In fact, as technical recruiters, the people we tend to talk with may come from startup companies. It may come from smaller, mid-sized companies as well, but there's no guarantee. So don't worry too much about, you have to go to those large companies. It's not even necessarily true that they pay the best either. So not that much of an issue.
Okay. It will be the last question here. Do you have any suggestion for Asian people who want to apply a job in Japan?
Are they in Japan or are they outside Japan?
That's a really good question.
Actually,
That's a big thing.
Yeah.
Because, people outside Japan, they tend to have a more difficulty to get that foot in the door. So I think they should be applying to companies who are actually open to foreigners, which I guess could be really difficult to understand and know. Like, they won't say, oh, we're open to foreigners. So I guess that's when recruiters actually come in, because they would know which companies are actually open. So I post jobs on LinkedIn to recruit for whoever, whether it's foreigner or Japanese national, and I try my best to really put it currently residing in Japan, because not all companies are currently hiring people from overseas. Ever since when COVID happened, the borders were closed, so companies are more strict to having those who are only having the visa or the status to stay here in Japan. So at least for people outside, it's easier maybe through a recruiter. Just go through LinkedIn or through recruiters' web pages. Find a good one, not a scammy. Because there's always a good and a bad side. Like anyway, whether it's a company or a person, right? So just make sure to do your research first, because you don't want to be giving out your personal information to someone who's not going to use it well. So at least for the people outside, just find that good enough research and information and connection. For people within Japan, well, I guess perseverance, effort, because it's not going to be easy, to be honest with you, especially if you don't have Japanese. So especially now, the market is not that active in hiring a lot of people. So just keep pursuing, keep applying, and also don't forget to improve yourself as well. A lot of people I can see on LinkedIn, they try to finish a lot of online courses, certificates, and improving their Japanese as well. For your information, JLPT, their exams are always on July and December. So that's one of the things that, recruiters look for. Do you have JLPT? If not, can you speak with us in Japanese? Can you interview in Japanese? I think those would be my suggestions. Continue to improve yourself. If you feel like I'm not getting any jobs right now, it's not the end of the world. You can just try and see what else can I do for myself so that the next time I apply, I can actually get that job.
Yeah.
Another thing, by the way, manage your expectations. If you're somebody who just graduated, there's two things you need to understand. One, you're not going to be paid a lot. That's absolutely true no matter where you go. You might be paid more in one company than compared to another, but that's something that's more luck than anything else. Same thing, don't worry about the industry you work in. Don't even worry about the job you do. People in Japan and the work here is, if you do one major, you are not guaranteed to get anything connected to that major, and that's okay. Find out what it is you're interested in doing, apply to a whole ton of them. Maybe if you want to try software engineering, and you want to try writing, and you want to try something else, just go for all of them. Your major matters very little in the long run. But that also just means have a dream, but don't be so set on it just yet. That's absolutely okay. You can work towards that in the future.
Wow, interesting. Because actually, I'm also interested in working here, but most of your experiences provide a lot of information for me and for the audiences who want to work here, especially the foreigner, both inside and outside country, outside Japan. And thanks for today. We get a lot of information and actually inspiration to keep working here, keep applying and improving ourselves to be here. Because I think Japan is one of the best countries that foreigners, especially in Asian people, that we want to stay here. So thanks for today, and maybe see next time we will have a lot more talking about maybe other issues here, because you are working here and spend almost 10 years